Hey there, Daniel from GrowYourMusicStudio.com. In this video, want to have a little bit of a change of pace from what I normally talk about. Most of the time I talk about marketing and business, and specifically how to market and do business in a music studio or music school. In this video, I want to take a little bit of a change of pace and talk about my personal organization system, how I do productivity in my life, and some topics around that. I want to talk about how my productivity system and organization system actually helped me get married. And third, I want to end by, again, going a little bit off the deep end here since it's Friday, with some things I love and some things I hate right now. So I'm going to jump right into it. Right after I graduated from college, which was well over a decade ago, I was given a book and a set of CDs by a mentor of mine called Getting Things Done. It was by a man named David Allen. And David Allen is a consultant to big Fortune 500 companies. He comes in and helps CEOs and high-level executives in companies make sense of their lives. These are the kind of people that are getting 200, 300, 500 emails a day, and he comes in and he helps them organize and tame the chaos, as it were. So I listened to this, and throughout my 20s, I kind of flirted with the system, but really didn't commit to it. And as I got busier, and then when kids came along for me, I took it a lot more seriously. But one of the ways, and this is the joke I was making earlier, it actually isn't a joke. One of the ways that I knew that I had found the right one was when it came time for us to start talking about, moving from dating into marriage and that whole talk. Not long after I popped the question, or not long before that, we had been kind of discussing marriage a little bit, and we had said that if we were going to get married, we should just sit down and plan the wedding out David Allen style. And it's like I knew I'd found the right one, because she was kind of just as committed to the organizational system as I was. So a little bit nerdy, but there it is. So I use this system, and it's essentially a way of organizing life and organizing the things you have to do into tasks that can be done very easily. The story that David Allen tells, and this is really cool, the story that David Allen tells is that when he was in college, and he's in his 60s now, but when he was in college, he had a warehouse job or some sort of factory job where he would go into work each day. He would do the work on the line. It was some sort of assembly line type thing. He would do the work. He'd stay there for 8-9 hours. He'd leave, and he didn't think about the job, because all he was doing, in his words, was cranking widgets. He was, making a part or assembling something and just doing it over and over and over and over again. There was no stress in that job. Well, once he moved on from an easy job like that widget cranking job, and moved into what we would call knowledge work or creative work like a business owner does, work isn't so cut and dried. You actually have to make decisions. You actually have to deploy creativity. You have to have some wisdom and deploy that wisdom against the business that you're trying to grow. And what he said is a lot of times the reason people have stress in their lives as a business owner is because they haven't defined their work. And so the Getting Things Done system is really a way of defining work and trying to convert every complicated project or complicated task that you have to do in your business to cranking widgets. So for instance, I'll make this real. One of the things that I have to do in my studio is, or we all have to do in a studio, is advertise. So you could put on your task list, get more students for your studio. Well, here's what that's going to do. It's going to make you incredibly stressed, because you don't just go out and get more students. There's a lot of steps that happen between the decision that you need to make more students and actually getting them. And so what David Allen would suggest is that you break it down into a number of manageable steps so that it's all converted, and this is it. This is the big concept. It's all converted into what is the next physical action that I need to do. Even down to the idea that if you're brainstorming, that's actually a physical action, because you're physically sitting in a chair and brainstorming. So the task that you would write down is sit in chair and think about problem. I've actually written that on my task list before, and the beautiful thing is it really works. So that's how I kind of run an attention folder with with actions that I have to get done next. And there's some other parts of the system too. My intention in this video isn't to get deep into that system, but just know I've run this system now for almost a decade. It's been very, very helpful for me. Mostly go through my life without a lot of stress because I've sat down beforehand and done the hard work of thinking about what the work's going to be before I have to do the work. And that's really where I would get into talking about the 2018 planning. So next week, I'm going to sit down and plan out my 2018 and figure out what the 3 or 5 or 7 big themes, 7 big goals I have for next year are. And I have a very specific way of doing planning when it comes to thinking out, a year in advance. So I will sit down and go through a few frameworks and use these as a way to tease thoughts and creativity out of me and tease out ideas and tease out themes that I want to be true next year. And there's a couple frameworks I use. Jay Abraham has a business framework, and I actually have been talking about that over the last week and a half. That's the 9 drivers. But more than that, he has a business questionnaire / checklist that he goes through. There's another entrepreneur I respect very greatly named Evan Pagan. He has a framework called Get Altitude. It was this seminar that he did in the mid-2000s, and he has a whole framework on how to grow and scale a business, and I'm going to use this framework to think about where I want my studio to be a year from now, where I want the Grow Your Music Studio blog to be a year from now, and I will use that framework and use that to think very deeply about the goals that I have for the coming year. Tim Ferriss, in his book, not Tribe of Mentors, the one before that, I have it right on my shelf over here. I should be able to. Tools of Titans. In his book, Tools of Titans, Tim Ferriss has a 17 questions he asks himself at the end of every year when he's thinking about the next year. I found those questions to be very helpful. Curiously, I would love to know if you have a framework that you use. I'd love for you to write that in the comments below this video. I'm pretty set in the ones that I'm using, but others in the community might really enjoy knowing what you use, and I would love for you to share that. I'd love to actually look that over myself. So write that in the comments below. Anyway, those are the 3 of the big frameworks I use. There's some other things I go through. Warren Buffett has a way that he says write down the 25 most important things that you want to accomplish in your life, and then circle 5. And those 5 are what you must do at all costs, and those other 20 are the things that you must reject. Even though you want to see them done, in the short term, you have to reject those 20. So Warren Buffett has a really cool idea there. There's all kinds of frameworks and productivity systems and life organization systems. I'm really happy with the David Allen one and some of these others that I've mentioned, and those are the ones I use. So once I come up with my 3, 5, 7 big goals for the year in the category of business, and maybe a few in the category of personal and family, like things I want to do there, I then move to the second phase. And before I go onto that second phase, just as an example, I'll explain a few of the goals that I had in 2017. My goal in 2017 was by the end of the year that there be that I have hired several people to work for my studio. At the beginning of the year, I wasn't sure exactly how that was going to happen, but because I kept my mind on it all year, and I mapped my actions during the year to that goal, ended up happening by the end of the year. Same thing, I had a vision for the metrics I wanted to be true in the Grow Your Music Studio blog, and I was keeping these things in mind during the year. And again, as I went through planning, I'm going to talk about in just a minute, I found it very easy to get to those goals by the end of the year. I had revenue goals for the studio and things of that nature. Like, these are the kinds of goals that I'm talking about that I was pursuing in 2017. So, the second phase. So I've got yearly goals. The last thing you want to do when you're at that point, at least in my opinion, the last thing you want to do is take those yearly goals and then each day wake up and look at these yearly goals and say, okay, let's get to it. It's too much of a disconnect. And in fact, if your goals are really big, which in my opinion they should be, most of the goals that I set out to do at the beginning of the year, I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to do them. That's how big I want them to be. If I were to look at those goals each day, or you were to write goals like that and look at them each day, it could begin to put a load of stress on your life, because there's a disconnect between what you have to do right this day and what you want to be true at the end of the year. So there's an intermediate step, there's actually several intermediate steps. At the beginning of January, April, July, and October. So every 90 days, I sit down and I look at the yearly goals and I decide what I want to make true over the next 90 days. And the thought being that, okay, what's it going to look like to be at that goal at the end of the year? What do I have to do in this 90 days to get to that outcome by the end of the year? So there's that piece. So I will write 90-day goals for myself every 90 days during 2018. And then, and I hope this doesn't sound too complicated, but this works really well for me. Each week, on Sunday night, I sit down and I look at my 90-day goals. And when I look at those 90-day goals, I decide what do I need to do this week to get there by the end of the quarter. So the second or third week of January, I'm going to look at those 90-day goals and think, okay, this has to be done by March. What do I have to do this week to make that a reality by the end of March? And then each day, when I plan out my day, I just look at the weekly goals and here's the one thing I need to do today. If by the end of the year, I want this many people watching my videos on YouTube, or I want this many people to have seen my studio in the city, or I have this many students, or have hired this many staff members, what do I have to do today? And so what this does is takes the stress off me of having to move mountains every single day of the year. I'm only having to do one single action or two single actions every single day because I took the time to plan out my year at the beginning of the year, and at each step, the 90 days, the week, and daily, I've done the thinking before it's time to do the work, so I can just, in a stress-free way, go about doing my work. And that's kind of how I do the planning in that way. So that is essentially how I'm planning out my 2018. That's the productivity system I use. That's the planning system I use. I'm really curious, for those who are watching either now live or watching later, write a question below. If something about this seems confusing or if it seems intriguing to you, would love to hear about that from you. And that leads me to my final thing for the broadcast today, for the video today, and that is a few things I love and a few things I hate. I thought I'd just throw this in just for fun this time. Again, like I said, usually I keep my comments and these videos to marketing, but it's Christmas weekend. I'm feeling a little extra happy today. I thought I'd throw in a few things I love and a few things I hate. So, a few things I love. There is a show on Netflix that I just discovered a couple months ago. The first season of this show is one of the best things I've seen in a very, very long time. Just a truly incredible show, very wholesome. There's some shows I like that are kind of dark, like Breaking Bad and things of that nature, but this show, truly, the first season at least, is incredibly family friendly, and that show is called The Crown. And it's about, without giving too much away, this TV show is about Queen Elizabeth II, who began reigning in her early to mid-20s in the 1950s in England. Incredible show. Would definitely recommend watching the first season. Second season's good too. It goes a little bit more into dark territory, so if you have a problem with that, be forewarned. Second thing I love right now is John Rutter's Christmas album. I've been listening to this almost every single day. So you can go to Spotify or go to YouTube and just type in John Rutter Christmas album, and you will hear just some truly glorious, glorious music. There's that. Some things I hate, all right? Here's the thing I hate. I hate to say it, folks, but The Last Jedi. I grew up as a huge Star Wars fan, and it pains me to say that the corporate media, the Mouse House, has ruined Star Wars by basically selling out the story to and writing the story by committee. I don't know if this is going to garner hate on this video or not, but that's where I'm at. The originals are classics, truly a labor of love, and what they've done with the prequels, obviously like 20-some, or almost 20 years ago now, and then this new batch of movies is just truly shameful. And I hate to say it, but I'm still a fan of the original trilogy, but I have to say that I am not a fan of Star Wars anymore. At least the blown out of proportion universe that it has become. They're like building a Star Wars hotel at Disney now. So Anyway, those are some things I love and things I hate. Things I love: The Crown on Netflix, John Rutter's Christmas album. Go to YouTube and look it up. It is awesome. Listen to it all the way through. Things I hate: The Last Jedi. I have been talking today about planning for 2018 and my productivity system. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week. Have a good weekend. Bye.